This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
A fun opening day of the NCAA men's tournament is in the books. We got some upsets. We got some good games going down to the wire. We got hopefully some lively brackets still cooking. Hopefully a good day number one for you. Today we're talking about some NFL free agency takeaways and kind of recap what we've seen from this first week, because if you're like me, probably weren't paying a ton of attention to that yesterday, given all the college basketball stuff. So we're going to bring on Ryan Williams, pick his brain about biggest moves so far, talk through some of the buzzier teams, headliner teams, and get his read on how things have gone so far in free agency in the NFL. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here once again, as mentioned, by Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at Ryan Alexander _W. Ryan, we're just a couple of guys rooting for 7 seeds. I'm rooting for Northwestern. You got Mizzou, both teams advancing, both teams staving off upsets. I think a lot of people picked in their brackets, so we're still alive, baby. How you doing today?
Yeah, we're doing really well. First win in the tournament from Missouri since I don't know how long, 10, 11 years. Been crazy. What Dennis Gates is doing there has been absolutely incredible. So we love that. The SEC has been kind of, representing all year pretty much, and they have been in the tournament thus far. Tennessee had a little bit of a scare there. They were one of my 2 survivor picks yesterday. So I was, kind of sweating that out late last night. But no, it's fun, man. When we have things like Arizona happening early and, other teams that got knocked out that I'm blanking on now. But that's the big one that I know was fun. And we just try to gear up for football season, which, is pretty much 24/7, 365, as we talked about. Been a while since you and I chatted, but there is no off season, right, Jim? So I'm happy to be back in the sidecar with you. You drive the motorcycle. I'll just be in the sidecar along for the ride, and we'll do this together.
Sidecar if you are a co-navigator. If you are like helping me steer the ship, keep things in the right direction, I will take that for sure. Yeah, I think that for me with yesterday, I always expect Northwestern to be the team doing what happened to Virginia in the Furman game. Like, Virginia, this heartbreaking loss where it's like, how did this happen? That's such a Northwestern thing. I mean, not in the tournament, obviously, because they're never there. But like, it just feels like that's kind of the thing. But now for you, not only do you get the Mizzou win, but then you get the Princeton upset of Arizona. And now you're facing Princeton in the second round. So, like, Mizzou got a legit chance to be playing in the second weekend.
They do, Jim, but it's also very nerve-wracking when people expect Missouri to win. Like, everybody expected I shouldn't say everybody, but quote unquote, everybody expected Utah State to be able to upset the Tigers. And so when they're the underdog, I feel like they always come ready to play. And when people start getting on the bandwagon is when we have stuff like Norfolk State that happened in 2012 when Mizzou was a 2 seed and people had them winning their brackets. So, but no, definitely, very optimistic. Cautiously optimistic that they'll be able to advance to the Sweet 16 there, knowing who their opponent is and who it could have been.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you tomorrow. Enjoy the game. And I think that should be a whole lot of fun. For today, we're going to break down free agency takeaways and go talk to Ryan about the Aaron Rodgers eventual trade. We'll talk about his Bears, get his read on what they've done so far, and talk about biggest winners and losers in free agency. If you want some thoughts on the Friday games in the NCAA men's tournament, we had Ben Stevens on last week to break down his thoughts on the Friday games. Talk to Ben about where he's seeing value in each region. So find that on the Covering the Spread podcast feed and over on the FanDuel YouTube page, and make sure you subscribe there to get these shows as they go live. This March, take your first shot at college hoops with FanDuel Sportsbook and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 in the bracket and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from that money line to point spreads, that 5v12 seed matchup you've been eyeing, all in an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. There's no better place to bet the tournament than FanDuel Sportsbook. Sign up today and make every moment more with FanDuel all tournament long. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit FanDuel.com/RG in Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Kansas and Wyoming, 1-800-522-4700 or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. And in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Let's dig in now to free agency. And let's start things off, Ryan, with a move that is not actually official yet, because Aaron Rodgers announced in the Pat McAfee show that he's been requested to trade to the Jets. It's not final yet, so we don't know what the official compensation will be. But let's assume the deal gets done, Ryan. Where would the Jets sit in the AFC hierarchy to you once that goes down?
Yeah, I think... So some of this is contingent on Lamar Jackson for me,
Sure.
which is still an ongoing saga that we don't know where he's going to end up. A lot of the reports have been that the ship has sailed in Baltimore and that there cannot be any rectification there. But, I think that some of the deals that have been thrown out there and announced, like he's not going to get Deshaun Watson money, but I think he's getting, going to be offered the second highest if he stays with Baltimore. I'm not fully convinced that he doesn't end up there. So granted that's in play. Also with the Chargers, getting Kellen Moore there is very interesting. I know Austin Eckler's demanded a trade. So I say all that to say, like, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo, those are still going to be the three top for me. Jets are a very wild card. Let's think about the Tom Brady situation when he goes to Tampa. Like, this offense, I feel like, gets immensely better. There is a question mark about the offensive line for me, which we saw just last year with Tom Brady, how that can affect an aging quarterback. So, that's going to be an interesting play. But, they get Breece Hall hopefully back from the knee injury. That defense is very stout. I think they can be in the top 5, arguably. But, Baltimore and the Chargers are, I think, right there aligned with them. For, as far as rosters go and complete putting it together with quarterbacks who, one who's won an MVP and two with Justin Herbert, who potentially could have a chance to win MVP with Kellen Moore being there and allowing him to, sling this rock.
Yeah, I have the Jets right in the same range you were discussing. I think that, again, I'd agree with you where it's still Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo. Those are the top 3 teams for me in the NFL right now, not just in the AFC, in that order. KFC, Cincinnati, KFC. Wow, I'm in Nashville right now for the World Fantasy Basketball Championship, so fried chicken is on my mind, and I think that's why I went to KFC. Anyway, Kansas City.
That's the first one that comes to your mind. I feel like there's a Nashville hot in there or something.
Oh yeah, no, you can't go to KFC in Nashville. Like that would be a crime. But it just for some reason I've had one day here, and all of a sudden my mind is consumed by chicken. Anyway. Kansas City 1, Cincinnati 2, Buffalo 3 in that order. And then I think there's like a tier. Okay. And I'm going to list off this tier. And you say if you would reject anyone from this tier. I would say the Jets, the Dolphins, the Browns, the Ravens, assuming Lamar's back, and the Chargers and the Jags, honestly. I think they're all in the same tier. That's 6 teams. So that's 6 teams fighting for math. So we got 7 total teams in the so we got 6 teams effectively fighting for 4 spots in the AFC. That's going to be wild. And I think what that does, it introduces a lot of variance in how things will play out. And like the Jets, I've got them as having the 10th toughest schedule right now. If we assume Rodgers is on that team, the Patriots have the toughest schedule in football if that happens. So stinks to be them. I think that to me, they're just in that tier. And I think that that's a good thing. I think they're near the top of that tier as well, but like it's still a cluster in the AFC, and I don't think they've done enough to pull away from that tier is kind of the way I'd interpret it with this Rodgers news.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point there because, Miami was one I'm looking at, long shot futures with the Jalen Ramsey signing. Very interesting. Or, basically trade for him because that makes it feel like they are all in on Tua. It's just like if Tua's healthy, then we get like the first 7 weeks of 2002 and we're just lighting people up on the scoreboard. And if we have the defense shored up, we're in a good spot. That division is one of the most interesting ones to me because of how active the other 3 teams have been outside of Buffalo. Like we obviously have the Jets situation, the Dolphins, as we just alluded to, and then you got the Patriots who are just like doing what they did 2 years ago in free agency, where it's just like we'll just load up at every other position outside of the defense and on offense. Like a Mike Gesicki bomb has just come through like this morning. James Robinson getting added into the mix. They were possibly in talks with DeAndre Hopkins or Jerry Jeudy, and you like seeing these moves and you're like, wait, what is going on here? Re-signed one of their corners, Jones, I believe, not too recently. So it's like everybody else in that division understands like what Buffalo is doing. So Buffalo definitely has their work cut out for them. So this is one of those things where we might be talking about the AFC East as we were talking about the AFC West last year when Russell Wilson joined the conversation, at least in the offseason.
I fully agree. I think that it's going to be a tough division. I think that's why the Bills you see here plus 125 to win the AFC East. That's not short, but I think that makes a lot of sense. I do think the Dolphins might be a bit too low at plus 370. I think that's kind of intriguing for me. But I think that the takeaway for me is the Jets. I know that they're like their AFC odds to win the AFC. They're plus 750, and then it's a big gap down to the Chargers at 13-1 and the Ravens at 13-1. I don't think that gap should be quite that large. I have a big bump up in them for Rodgers, but that might be a little bit higher than I'm willing to go personally. Let's talk to you about your Bears, Ryan, because they made some moves here recently. They brought in DJ Moore and then a lot of moves defensively in the opening week of free agency. They also brought in Deontay Foreman. They brought in Robert Tonyan. Big Shot Bob is now in town. So when you look at the Bears, what's your outlook for them with where things stand right now?
I think at the very least, you're looking at it to where, as people have alluded to, I can't coin this term, but the boogeyman is out of the division, right? So things are opening up because the Lions, we pretty much know who they are, although it is interesting that they brought in David Montgomery to the mix. So I thought I knew what the Lions' plan were, and then they made that move, and I still don't know what the Lions are necessarily doing. But they're going to be a team to watch, the favorite right now in the division, which is crazy. I can't remember the last time I've seen the Lions favored to win the NFC North. Green Bay, I guess, still kind of an unknown with Jordan Love, but with the pieces that they're kind of losing in the situations that Rodgers was dealing with last year, I don't see that changing. So, and then the Minnesota Vikings with Kirk Cousins, I think they're just always going to be relevant, but we'll see how it's supposed so they can get Dalvin Cook possibly out the door with Alexander Madison re-signed for 2 years, and couple Thielen's gone, but bring back Harrison Smith. So I just feel like they're just going to be the same, just filling in pieces. So I think the Bears have the most upside of any team because of what they're doing. I mean, Poles has basically just said, we had a top 3 cap situation available to us also with the number 1 pick. Like, we're just going to make moves ad nauseum and really get this team shored up, which, talk is one thing. I felt like they said that coming into last year. And then they really are backing that up with what they're doing. I think TJ Edwards, if he can stay healthy, this guy's a stud. Tremaine Edmonds, we know enough about him. You got 2 linebackers and then DeMarcus Walker as well on the D line to go along with a secondary that's pretty young, but has shown themselves to, be talented, and probably the best unit of this core. And then like you got your quarterback that you're investing in, you bring him, a number one wide receiver. Now all of a sudden that wide receiver room looks somewhat legit when, Mooney's your 2-3, Tanyan in there with a veteran speak to go along with Cole Kmet, and you still have a top 10 pick in the draft that you can choose to either, trade back again and package up for some things, or really shore up, the offensive line. So was disappointed that they missed out on McGlinchey with the Broncos kind of swooping him in. But the Tennessee Titans guy that they got, oh my gosh, Nate Jones, I believe, that, makes you feel solid that they're actually, trying to shore up that line. So I think all things considered, like they really should be favored. I say all that to say they should be favored more than they are right now, which is currently on the FanDuel Sportsbook 3-1. Like I'd much rather like the upside of what's going on here than what the Vikings are doing. And I just think this is going to be a team this is going to be a division where the teams kind of just beat up on each other, and then may the best man win. So if the NFC North's wide open, they get into the playoffs. That's all you kind of hope for. Anything can happen when you get into the playoffs. The NFC is an interesting picture, and I'm excited for it.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. It's bananas. You may have, as weird as like the NFC North is, you might have two of the best 5 quarterbacks in the NFC in that division. And like, I mean, honestly, you could make a case for 3 of the top 6 if you want to put Kirk in there too. So like, it's pretty interesting. So I don't know. I think it's there's potential for stuff to get weird. I've still got the Bears a bit lower personally than the Packers, even with Love, in large part because I still like the Packers defense a decent amount. But honestly, like it's all about the Lions for me. I still think that plus 145 might be a value there. I know I don't want to get too high in the Lions. This has happened before, but I think they're a really good team. So we'll see how things play out there. But I think the Bears have made themselves like viable. They've made themselves competitive, and in the NFC that can be enough for sure. Let's move out to the AFC West and talk about the Broncos and the Raiders. Broncos really bolstering their offensive line. They've made some moves to like replace guys who had left in free agency on defense as well. The Raiders bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo, trading away Darren Waller for a 3rd round pick, but replacing him kind of with Jacoby Myers as well. When you look at those two teams, I think that like we can't ask, okay, are they competitive in the AFC West? Because they're not. I mean, it's the Chiefs. I'm not going to have this discussion about like, can they compete with the Chiefs? They can't. Let's not do that. But are they competitive for an AFC wildcard spot? Because as we discussed, that like second tier in the AFC is nuts. Can they be in that tier, or are they still a decent chunk below that for you?
The Raiders are for me.
Okay.
I just, I don't believe that Garoppolo and Myers are equivalent to what Carr and Waller are. That's just me personally. But it's a great situation. We always talk about the athletes who are teaming up and just bringing their friends along, like Rodgers makes all these demands to get Lazard, Cobb, and Mercedes Lewis, the grave of Mercedes Lewis, to come along to New York with them. But it's like, are we talking about these coaches who just bring back the pieces that they're comfortable with? Like I'm looking at the the Patriots practice squad when Josh McDaniels was there, and like we were, preseason football with Garoppolo throwing it to Jacoby Myers. Like, what are we doing here? And Jacoby Myers has been, a legit player. I think that, it's cool to see him get his due, I guess, so to speak. I'm not going to put this in like a Christian Kirk realm where like all of a sudden like we see something crazy from Jacoby Myers because Garoppolo's throwing him the ball. I think that's, and it's way stocked down, I feel like, for Devontae Adams, which we can get into for another day, because Garoppolo's not throwing him deep balls like Rodgers and Carr used to. So I don't even consider the Raiders when I'm thinking about them. Now, the Broncos is interesting because of what Sean Payton is going to bring. I think that's really the key there. Like, this is not a guy who's going to come in and mess around with things. Like, he's coming back to coach for a reason. I think it is interesting that he chose to go with the Russell Wilson situation there. And it is, very interesting to me that like Judy's on the trading block and or potentially in the moves that we can potentially see from this team on the defensive side. So I do think regime is a big factor to it. And I think coaching does matter in the NFL. So I do kind of give them a little bit of the bump there to kind of compete with the rest of the teams that you kind of mentioned. They're probably just outside of the realm to me. Honestly, based on how things go in the offseason, like I might even put them in the same tier as the Browns, just because of how Watson looked last year. Like I'm not convinced that like this is the dude that should be having the most astronomical contract in the history of football. Like, what are we doing here? But I digress. I understand where you're coming from, that these two teams kind of seem like they're on the outside looking in, but I would put the Raiders a lot far back than I would the Broncos. The Broncos are probably like in the 2B, 3A tier for me in the AFC as it currently stands right now. And that's what I think we're dealing with in the West. I think we got a 2-man race at the top with the Chiefs and the Chargers.
Yeah, I think that I'd agree with you where the Raiders right now, they are 22nd in my power rankings. So they're still not there. They're actually, funny enough, you were talking about New England. They're basically tied with New England, who is one spot ahead of them. Yeah. Denver is up in 17th, which for the AFC is not super high, but like, it's competitive at least. And I think there's room for upside there. If they were to trade away Jerry Jeudy, I would have them a decent amount lower because a lot of it's based on Russell Wilson with infrastructure around him, including the head coach, including the offensive line. That would downgrade them. I actually think Pittsburgh is in that tier too, kind of weirdly. They haven't made a ton of noise this offseason, but like their defense last year when TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick were healthy was bananas good. So I think Pittsburgh is actually in that discussion too. I think that Pittsburgh and Denver are the two teams who I think could nudge their way into that second tier we were discussing if things were to break in their favor. I think that's kind of the two upside teams I've got an eye on right there. Okay, let's talk about the biggest gainers in free agency. When you look at your expectations for teams pre-free agency versus your expectations for teams now, which teams have shifted most for you, Ryan, in a positive sense in that time, including ones potentially you've already discussed?
Yeah, I mean, the Bears are going to be up there for me. I do want to say there's two teams actually in the NFC who are kind of intriguing. It's one with the Saints, because I think that the Saints are just the best team in that division now. 5-1 odds with the Buccaneers on Baker Mayfield. This is very interesting for me to kind of follow along with. But I do think that defense really regressed from who they were, a couple years back. So that kind of worries me in general with that. But if they catch lightning in the bottle with Baker, what he was showing the Rams towards the end of last season, that can be intriguing. But I do think, the Saints being the favorite there in the division, you have a quarterback to kind of put you over the hump. Like Carr's good enough to kind of get them there. So I think that's fun to talk about. And then the New York Giants, man, I was sitting here probably with you at this time, if not later on, right after the draft, not really buying into Daniel Jones, not really sure what Brian Daboll is going to be able to bring from, offensive mind, but still had question marks on the defensive side of the ball. And then, they find themselves, kind of making some noise towards the end of last season. And so now you're talking about bringing in the likes of a Darren Waller and they're replacing Kenny Golladay with Paris Campbell, it looks like. If they can make some other moves on the defensive side of the ball with the shore up of Jones and Saquon, you got to consider the Giants as contenders. Philly's going to be the cream of the crop, right? But Dallas has gotten worse. The Commanders are not anywhere close to being, I think, in the conversation at this point yet. So, the Giants deserve some love. The NFC is pretty much going to be, wide open outside of the 49ers and the Eagles. And we don't even know, with the 49ers, what they really look like. They're the odds-on favorite right now to win the NFC. Who's quarterbacking this team? Lance is maybe healthy, but has not played a significant season. We know Purdy's not going to be back for the beginning of the season at all, and Jimmy G's gone now. So that really, puts a lot of question marks for me. I mean, the Eagles, 4-1 to win that, like they should be the reigning favorite there. But like the Cowboys have regressed. The Lions 11-1, I guess. The Rams, I want nothing to do with at this point in time. And then you got the Giants. I mean, and even like when you're looking at the Packers are still somewhat in the mix. I think just because of the Aaron Rodgers unknown, but like 15-1 to them kind of seems outrageous with what we know. So yeah, I think that the New York Giants can find themselves in the spot to be kind of in the mix towards the end of the year, and that's what you can ask for. I think they're probably a top 5 team in the NFC East or in the NFC, excuse me, as it stands right now.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. We're still not super convinced on Daniel Jones, but we saw what he did last year. He was efficient. He was decently efficient. He wasn't super, but he was decently efficient, and that was in an offense that has less talent than he has right now. I know that it's not huge upgrades with Waller coming in and with Paris Campbell coming in, but compared to what he was thrown to before, it actually is a decent little move. So I think that they're at least interesting. And if you can't have a top tier quarterback in the NFC, you might as well have a good infrastructure to make a quarterback efficient, right, even if the quarterback's not going to do himself. I think they do have that, and I think they've proven that for sure. The Saints, I agree with you, where they are very interesting. It's deserved where they are right now, just because it's hard to have a lot of faith in anybody else in that division. I'm a bit worried about their defense with all the guys they've lost there, but I still think that they've got some things in their favor, in large part due to schedule, more so than anything else, but still think that they're worth monitoring for sure. What about the opposite side here, Ryan? Any teams that have lost a lot of firepower that have you concerned right now?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
And they could, maybe do something in the draft to make me feel a little bit more confident in, but what have we done to really get Dak help? So Stephon Gilmore, right? The signing that happened within the offseason. Okay, so the defense is getting a little bit better. I am not convinced that Kellen Moore was the issue with the Cowboys when we're talking about, what Mike McCarthy's role in all of this is. You got him, with very interesting quotes in this offseason talking about, the path to success, and Kellen Moore was throwing the ball 40 times a game, which is not true on its face. And that, I guess they're going to go back to establishing the run without Zeke and just, give Tony Pollard the 300 touches or 300 carries, I should say, a game. I don't think that's the solve. So this has them drafting Bijan Robinson out of Alabama written all over it for me. They are one that I just don't know what they're doing, especially with what Philly has proven that they've been able to do over the years. I think they take a step back. And then we have to talk about what the heck is going on with the Tennessee Titans. Absolutely nowhere near do they deserve to be second favorite to win the AFC South at this point. I really just want to put money on the Indianapolis Colts. I feel better with their situation, not even knowing who their starting quarterback is going to be, than what the Titans are doing. They could be without, what is their offense going to look like with Ryan Tannehill, who is pretty much on his way out? They have no faith in Malik Willis, as they showed last year. I don't think that he's the answer. Derrick Henry's requested a trade. You signed Robert Woods last year in the offseason. He's already gone now. Treylon Burks, you invested a top pick in. Who's throwing him the rock? The offensive line has completely shifted. The defense is not great and was not great last year. So many holes and question marks. I just don't know how I can potentially buy into this team. I really want, as soon as things are available, I want to be able to look at the FanDuel Sportsbook and say, can this team, it's tough with the Carolina situation, but even with the Carolina situation, they're going to get the number one quarterback. I want to have them finish in last place in the NFL because that's just how much things have changed on the face. And I don't think it's at least caught up on the sports book, or maybe even with, in the casual NFL fan too. I think there's still, the Titans, they're good. Everybody's going to be waiting for that shoe to drop with Derrick Henry, but he's probably 50-50 not coming back to this team. And so without that, like, it's just, they're going to be in kind of a perpetuity there that, you know, kind of puts them in the same category with the Colts and the Texans for me. And then it's just a matter of like, how good do the Texans and Colts get just immediately with, you know, 2 of the top 3 picks in the draft. So that's kind of how I feel about the Tennessee Titans today.
Yeah, I think they're closer to the Titans or the Texans and the Colts tier than they are the Jags. The Jags are in a tier of their own in this conference. If you had to guess where the Titans are in my power rankings, where would you approximate them as being right now?
So I'm going to say that you likely have them to do you have them as maybe like the 4th worst team in the league?
So I got them 23rd, which is a little bit higher than that. But like for a team that almost made the playoffs last year, that's pretty low. I agree with you because last year, what happened with their defense was they had like very good rush defense and they were great on late downs. But they've lost some of the guys who made their rush defense good, like David Long. And now you kind of expect some regression in the flukier parts of what they did. So you take away the one thing they did really well last year. You take away some key guys on offense. I don't know if they had key guys to lose, but you know, like they've lost some firepower. I think that they're kind of in danger of like you said, falling out of the second place in the AFC South. I can't quite get to them to finish last. I think that's Arizona right now with the Kyler uncertainty around when he'll be healthy. I think Arizona is the worst team in football right now, which is kind of weird.
That's fair.
But like, I think that there's a lot of intriguing stuff at play with the Titans, and it doesn't seem like they're a team that's trying super actively to compete in 2023, but it's hard to get a firm read on them. So I'm on board with you. I talked about them on Tuesday as being a team that I thought had lost quite a bit. I was a little bit concerned about them, and nothing that's happened since then has changed my mind. So I'm on board with you there. Let's take a look at the futures board now, Ryan. When you look at the futures right now that we have not discussed, any stand out to you based on what we've seen in the first couple of days of free agency?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about the 3-1 with the Bears, which I do like. Looking at some of the coach of the year candidate type of things, it's hard to see or repeat come into the mix. Peyton, obviously, I think very escalated up there with the 12-1 second favorite. Of course, Dan Campbell is up there. The Bengals could be interesting with Zach Taylor. He's 25-1. If the Bengals can make some splashes, I like that. Also with Mike McDaniel, 20-1. I think that could be a little bit interesting if he's able to, get the Dolphins in a significant space there, considering the division. I do like, 5-1 on the Bengals for the AFC. I mean, they've shown that they've been able to compete with the Chiefs and the Bills for a long time. That's probably going to change, not right, with the Rodgers decision. Like, I feel like the Jets will get steamed up. Potentially, the Chargers won't get there. The Ravens won't even get there with Lamar. But, the 4th favorite in the AFC, I'm willing to take a chance on Cincinnati yet again, which could go probably to the 7-1 range. Love that. Division winners, I think, are very interesting. It's really weird to see the Jaguars at -145 in the South, but that's the state of the South. I think that the Eagles at +105, like, why not take plus money on a team who is the favorite, like, in the NFC or second favorite in the NFC? I keep forgetting about San Francisco's number, but I think they're interesting. We talked about the Saints. It's interesting. I can't do division with the Chargers, with the Chiefs being there, but they're going to be somebody I keep my eye on. The Jets win total, the Jets to make the playoffs -162, gross, not touching that. Jets win total at 9.5. Like, I'm willing to go alternate line 10 when it gets released. It's -142 at 9.5. Like, Rodgers is like double digits in his career, like, ad nauseum when you look at what he's been able to do. Obviously, that's with the Packers, and this is a new regime. But we have seen quarterbacks switch teams and have success, and I think like that's really what you're thinking of with this team. Is like they were pretty much a playoff team with the likes of Mike White and Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco, like playing quarterback roulette at this position. Rodgers has got to be good enough for, at least, the 2 wins there that are probably a little bit of the difference. So I like looking at them 10-1. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at right now with the state of the affairs. As we look at it, I think, when we're talking about long shots, if you want to scroll down and get dicey, and so we're looking at it's tough, but Chargers, 21 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. I think there's some merit to that. NFC gets really fun. I got the Bears at a future number that is not the 50-1 as it currently stands. So I'm definitely going to be holding out hope on that one. But I think, if you want to try and take a chance on some of these teams in the NFC who you think will make the playoffs, I think that's kind of what you want. These are going to be some of the best prices that you see. So, like a team, even a team like Seattle, I mean, if you want to get kind of in, to play around with some of these numbers, like 60-1, that's pretty nice. If you believe in Geno, I probably will get a little bit crazy with the Miami Dolphins here because that division is just so fun to me, and I really am rooting for Tua. So yeah, this is kind of the best time, right, of the year to kind of really get some of your long shot bets in and play with the market before things kind of show their face once we get into the draft and the end of agency and the schedule release and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins 28-1 to win the Super Bowl, like that's a number to have my eye on, just because again, I think they're in that second tier of the AFC. And I think that their positioning in relation to the Jets is interesting. 28-1 for the Dolphins, 15-1 for the Jets. I think that gap should be a bit smaller personally. It's just really hard to bet against the Chiefs ever. So that's the issue I wind up running into there. Alrighty, that is all that we have here for today. Talking NFL free agency. Next week, we'll be back. We'll talking some NBA, NHL on Monday. Got some NCAA tournament talk coming at you on Tuesday and Wednesday, and a whole lot of good stuff all in this same feed. So make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Also check us out over on the FanDuel YouTube page. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Ryan, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Pleasure to have you back on the show once again for today. Good luck to Mizzou tomorrow. Good luck to you with your bracket as well. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, great to be back with you, Jim. I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody for following along. And go Tigers, baby.
All righty. You can find Ryan on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you across this weekend. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.